Welcome, everyone. It's Tuesday. It's June 11th, not June 6th, which I somehow put in the title of this. June 11th, we're live here. It's right before 11 a.m. We're going to kick it off soon. We'll give everyone a minute to hop in here. Greg Guenthner, good morning, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Everything is going well. Let me mute for one sec. All right, there we go. Yeah, while we wait for everyone to come on, I just wanted to say, we've got the comments open in YouTube, so go ahead and, if you just want to say hi, if you've got any questions, if you got any tickers we want to cover. The other thing is, I don't know how many months we've been doing these, Gunner, but it's always good to take a second and look at the big picture. I mean, for everyone at home, are these top trades videos meeting your expectations? Is there anything else we should be covering? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Go ahead and throw some comments in there too, just sort of big picture stuff of anything we could be doing better here. Obviously, I enjoy these because I get to talk to Gunner. We get to just talk shop, look at charts, and look at some of the best trades that he likes setting up. And in this market, there's something to be said for that because this market is chewing people up, spitting them out. So it has not been easy. Other than joking in the green room earlier, Gunner said, clearly we should have just bought Nvidia on Jan 1 or whatever and then taken it off for 6 months. That would have
Right.
been
Yeah, that was the trade right there.
so. That's a top trade, everyone. See you next week. Well, Gunnar, why don't you kick us off? You got a bunch of stuff on the agenda. I won't even spoil it. Let's get right to it and let us know what you're seeing in the markets. What are the top trades for today, and where should we go?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. We're entering this period. We've been talking about this for a little while, where we could potentially be seeing some summer chop after such a big push higher from some of the major big stocks on the market. But really, what it comes down to, and I wrote about this a little bit earlier today, is that we're dealing with two separate markets right now. We have the AI mega cap tech hype going on that's been pushing everything higher, and then there's everything else, which really isn't doing much of anything. Yeah, we've had these blips of these mini bubbles of GameStop and other meme stocks sort of popping back up and dropping, but there really doesn't feel like there's a lot of juice left in that trade right now. It makes me want to start to think about leaning short. What trends are probably going to reverse and fail. None of this is guaranteed, but at the same time, this is where my mind is going right now. We've had a lot of these great runs, and now we're coming into summertime. Trading volume is incredibly low lately. There's not a lot of people active in the markets. There's just a few stocks kind of pushing us higher. There's some breadth issues in the market, which aren't an issue until they become an issue. But at the same time, there's all these little red flags that are just slowly starting to pop up throughout the market. And then we have what I think could be possibly a sell the news event, at least temporarily, in the big Nvidia split that just happened. Nvidia went 10 for 1, and now it's a cheaper stock. You only have to pay a little bit more than $100 a share instead of $1,100-$1,200 for a share of Nvidia. Doesn't matter. They're just slicing up the pie differently. But at the same time, it's a psychological thing, and I think it does matter to some retail investors. It certainly matters when you're trying to buy options. So are we going to be at a point in the market right now where everybody who wanted to buy these big popular stocks, they've already bought, and we might get some extra chasing with the Nvidia split? But where do we go from here? What is going to be the next big emerging trend? I'm much more interested in digging down and trying to find out where these possible rotation plays could be, rather than attempting to chase some of these stocks that have just shot higher pretty consistently over the past several weeks and months, and Nvidia would definitely be one of those. Now, again, I'm not saying that it's a bad trade. Anybody who made money off of that stock over the past 6 months or more should be commended. It was a great play. It ran a lot farther than most people expected. It certainly captured the imagination of most people on the markets. But again, it all comes down to where are we going to go from here, and just how far these overextended trades can really extend. Especially, like I said, it's the summer, and we're starting to see a lot of these speculative names start to roll over. If you look at what's happened with GameStop, and I feel like we've been talking a lot about GameStop, but I feel like it's a good market barometer as far as what's up with the speculative money. We had the big pop in mid-May, and here we are almost a month later. We had a little bit of an echo pop here, and this was, I don't know if this was during the live stream or maybe Friday was the live stream. Matt, did you tune in for that thing? But it turned out to be a big disappointment.
I mean,
GameStop
it
was
was
down.
it was a cool event. Like they have a lot of anytime you're talking about Apple and some of the big tech, and you also have to remember, I mean, it's 60% of the market has an iPhone. Very, very important. That's arguably the most important piece of technology in your life, and it's on you all the time. And 60% of Americans that have cell phones have an iPhone. So all the things they're doing, whether it's a game changer or not, or whether people think it's dumb, like it's important. It can move markets.
I'm talking about GameStop. Were you with the
Oh,
Roaring Kitty live
oh,
stream?
Roy and Kitty. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I thought you said tuned in, and I'm tuned in to the
No, no, we'll talk
worldwide
about that. We'll
developer
talk about that. I'm
conference
talking about
later.
GameStop though. If you tuned into
Now,
the Roaring
I
Kitty,
clearly tuned in for a little while, and I was like, wow, I can't tell if I'm getting got or what's happening here, because like, eh, oh man, like
I didn't tune into it, but I saw the reactions to it, and he was late to the stream, and people were expecting him to talk up the stock, and he really didn't. Is what I gathered from
yeah,
the
and
situation.
it's very strange from like a sociological standpoint. It's like I can't tell what's going on with that guy. I can't tell if he's just nuts. I can't tell if he's a Mensa genius. But the way that call went, if anybody was on it or if you weren't, and again, sometimes we talk about this roaring kitty stuff. It's crazy. It's meme stocks. It's whatever. But like the market was moving on it. They had, God bless it. What was it? Like 800,000 people live on that call on YouTube.
Yeah,
It was a crazy amount of people. And the guy's on there. He's like, whoa, whoa, ah, oh man, oh hey everyone, for like a half an hour. That's all he
right.
was doing. He was basically not saying anything, but just kind of like drinking and being weird. So like,
Yeah,
is that
I
what it's
think
come down to? I don't know.
well, that's just it. I think that sort of encapsulates the whole idea of this meme stock movement. It started out as the stick it to the man, show the big hedge funds, who's really in charge of the market, that sort of thing. And it's kind of just evolved into a big joke now. And the fact that the stock couldn't follow through and that he didn't really deliver on the live stream, I think that says a lot. You have all those people tuning into a live stream, and that this is them voting. This big red bar is them voting on what they saw right there, and clearly they weren't impressed with that. And then we had another double-digit drawdown on Monday. It's attempting to bounce a little bit today. It's basically break even, but I mean this chart is a mess. And if you look at some of the also ran meme stocks right here, like here's AMC. It had a huge pop, and then it didn't even have the echo pop of GameStop. And are they still even like talking about what is it?
Bad, bad.
Bed Bath and Beyond, whatever's left of that. I don't know if this was. Yeah, look, that even got a little bit of volume. You
Bed
can see
Bath and Bankrupt.
they had,
Come
yeah,
on.
bankrupt. Bed Bankrupt and Beyond maybe is the new name for this one. But like I said, like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of juice left in that. It's not 2020 anymore. It's not 2021. All the attention now, all the big money has been pushed into mega cap tech, Nvidia, all that stuff. So I think this is kind of a sign of the times, and the fact that folks aren't grabbing onto these meme stock movers, I think says a lot about where we are in the markets too.
Yeah.
I think we could, and this is just guessing. This is kind of the best we can do as far as like guessing about sentiment. But I think it's kind of these folks saying, "Hey, we tried and we lost, and we're out for a while." And I feel like that's kind of trickling into different parts of the market right now. I'm not particularly pleased about what I see in this Bitcoin chart. I don't know about you, but to me, the fact that Bitcoin faked lower here at the start of May and really looked like it was going to push toward the top of its range kind of teased us a little bit. If you had talked to me last week or on Wednesday, June 5th, right here,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, yeah, this thing is going to definitely test 73K. It's going to post new all-time highs. From there, I don't know, maybe it needs to rest, but like it looked like it was headed towards some sort of a retest of those March all-time highs, and then it would push toward a breakout. It just kind of felt inevitable. Well, it's completely falling apart now. Friday was an ugly day for it. It was an ugly day for a lot of stocks, but for crypto, not a great day right there with it down 2%. And then this morning, it was kind of teasing that 67K level. It's below it right now. It's down $3,000. It feels like to me, this Bitcoin chart is saying, I'm not ready. There doesn't have the buyers, doesn't have the wind at its back. And I think we're going to be in this range for longer. Are we going to come down here all the way down and retest the low 60s? I think it's possible. But I think it's going to be messy. The fact that we couldn't get from the bottom of this range to the top over the course of the past month and do a legitimate retest of those highs, it just tells me that, again, going back to what's going on with GameStop, two totally different animals here, but we don't have the juice. We don't have the buyers here to push this thing higher just yet. And is this about to enter, some summertime chop? Is it going to be a total flop and start to break down? I don't know, but it's not looking good. And then we were talking about how the Bitcoin miners were looking relatively weak just last week on the call. And if you look at Mara, I mean, it's recovered some of those losses from earlier today, but this thing fell off a cliff and was down almost 10% earlier in the session. And you can see here, it's kind of teetering on a point where I would say, like, I think it might be coming back down to the mid 14s to retest those lows right there. We look at Riot. I bet you it's going to look the same. I haven't looked at it. Yeah, I mean, I think this would have been a good bullish bet right here as it hooked lower right here and then retook that support area around $9. That would have been a good bet to see if this thing really pushed higher and accelerated. It did not. And now it's just creeping back down here toward $9. If it loses $9 again, this thing is toast. And again, you can see the wild swings from 2023 when Bitcoin started pushing higher, and then these echo booms, which just haven't really gotten it back up there. There's all of those folks saying that, like, these Bitcoin miners are going to be in trouble in the post-halving environment anyway. I'm leaning toward believing them at this point. I was kind of waiting for price to tell me whether they were right or wrong. Feels like that might be the right answer, and that these stocks might be running into some trouble. What's the other one? CLSK. That's the one we kind of like too. Again, it feels like this is going back into the mid 12s. It just can't get any momentum here. And with Bitcoin losing ground and falling back into more of the middle of this range, with Ethereum rolling over right here, we talked about Ethereum maybe being the big catch-up trade since it's been lagging Bitcoin. It's well below its all-time highs, which are closer to 5,000 that it posted a few years ago. Looks like it's going to need a reset. Looks like we're going to need more time here. And again, is this another symptom of folks tuning out and being gone for the summer and this market chopping along or moving lower after just a killer start to the year? I think that's a strong possibility at this point.
Yeah. And we said it last week. Remember, Bitcoin was at 70K, and we were saying very level-headed. It could go to 85K, and we wouldn't be surprised. It could go to 55K, and we wouldn't be surprised. 55K doesn't seem as obvious on the chart, but like low 60s is essentially 55K, so, and now it's starting to head that way. So the miners are never going to be able to hold up if Bitcoin has some trouble, if it stumbles. So those guys that's good.
Yeah, they could come out with all kinds of positive press releases all they want to, but they're going to move with the price of Bitcoin either higher or lower, and that's just how they trade. And I don't think there's any change in that. I do remember last week the one caveat that we said about Bitcoin was, or at least I discussed it, was that if the market is sluggish, is Bitcoin going to be able to attract those speculative-minded buyers and push higher, even if the market fails to push higher in the weeks ahead? It's looking like no now. It's looking like that, that whole group, because anybody who's been listening to these calls for a long period of time, I like to lump Bitcoin in with kind of the tech growth trade. They were hand in hand. Every relief rally during the 2022 bear, it was crypto and tech growth hand in hand on the way up, and then when they failed, they were hand in hand on the way down. I still feel like there's a connection for those trades because it's the same type of buyer who's looking at those particular stocks. And right now we have a situation where growth stocks still don't look that great. Bitcoin's not looking that great at the moment. The miners look even worse, I would say. I would say they're even more of a risky bet. So, I mean, I'm thinking downside for all of this, at least for the time being.
Yeah. And just to put a fine point on what you're saying, we were talking about this earlier in the green room and in the office, but that's a pretty loud sign of the times that GameStop can't keep momentum. Bitcoin can't keep momentum. And if you think about that, like, oh, it's just in finance and charts, it's one thing. But it's like, if you think about it, of like what's actually happening with buyers and sellers, they're running out of money. Like
Right.
Gunnar said it earlier. He's like, oh, Roaring Kitty goes on and it's like, I'm back in, I'm buying millions of dollars or whatever. And all of his little followers in 2021, guess what? They had tons of money. They were just like, whatever, let's spend money on all this stuff. Right now, I don't think they have money. So they're like, Roaring Kitty, you're funny and all, but I can't buy GameStop anymore. I got to go buy lunch. Like, I got to pay my rent and my car payment. And like, I'm going into debt because of GME and I just lost the last options that you recommend, like that kind of stuff. So I think that's a sign of the times for the broad market. And that's why we talk about these, YOLO trade, GME, meme stock stuff, because if that money isn't there, it's just like all the other economic charts. Oh, here's consumer credit. Here's savings in people's accounts. They're all looking at the same thing. Do people have money to buy stocks and move this market higher? Because without buyers, it goes lower. Simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And from a more technical standpoint too, you'll get into these periods in the market and you'll start to feel it happening because it will start happening in your own trades too, where you'll see a stock, it'll break out above a certain level, but it can't sustain that breakout and then it retreats back into that range and it either moves sharply lower or it just sort of chops along in there. And you'll get into those environments a few times a year, and it's just the fact that there aren't the follow-up buyers to chase it and push it higher, and that's all it is, bottom line. And right here we're seeing the same thing in whether it's GameStop or crypto or pick your poison. They're starting to move, and then when the rubber hits the road and it's time for this thing to get going again, there just aren't the buyers there to push it higher, and it fails. And so I think that's the type of environment we're going to be in. And the question is, how is it going to spread across the market, and what stocks is it going to affect? Like, if you pull up the Nvidia chart, it looks great. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know why it has this big candle here. This must have been a misprint of some sort. I don't think it really was trading up here in the 190s.
Look at that. That's got
Yeah,
to be the split, right? There's just something wacky that happened.
yeah, there's
Like,
something weird going on with this chart. But at the same time, if we just ignore that, I mean, there's no trouble here with this stock just yet. But there's all these things happening around it. And so I'm kind of on red alert to see, like, okay, we had this big split, we had this news event. We have all these runaway gaps in this stock right here. It's up over 40% over the past month alone, adding like $1 trillion to its market cap. No big deal. And it's just gapping higher every single day. And now it's consolidated again. And it looks very constructive. I'm not taking that away from them. I'm not saying that we need to go out right now and withdraw our life savings and start shorting Nvidia. But my antenna is definitely up. And I'm thinking, like, okay, what's going to happen now with this stock, now that all these things have happened, and now that we have this amazing split and it's a cheaper stock and it's just ready to roll, looking good. It's going to go to $200. I mean, how crazy are people going to be with this thing? How much higher can it possibly go before it needs to at least chop along and reset? We already got a pretty decent reset March through the middle of May, but it's absolutely ripping higher again. Is it time to start sharing the wealth and putting those gains in other places? Are we going to have these rotation trades start to perk up, or is this going to be a situation where the whole market gets kind of sluggish and we just sort of limp along into the summer and we just end up with some brutal summer chop? I think all of those are possibilities looking ahead the next couple of weeks.
yeah. And I don't know, what's your opinion on Nvidia since it was so expensive? Is that more of like an institutional stock? So that's why it might be able to keep going up because maybe the institutions are coming in and you get, like money managers being like, oh, I better get into Nvidia so I don't look like an idiot. Because like what we were saying, like if you would have just bought Nvidia the whole year, you'd look like a genius.
I think we're getting past that point though, because it was already a big winner in 2023. It's obviously a massive winner so far this year. What's it up year to date? It's up triple digits, right? Yeah, it's up 150% almost year to date. So it gets to the point where it would be kind of silly if you're an institutional investor not to take some sort of profits on this thing at this point. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I would think that, like, they got to be taking some money off the table on something that's been such a big consistent winner. But I mean, this all happened because expectations just changed dramatically. Everybody had the valuation wrong, and they had to adjust very, very quickly. And now that folks are adjusting, what happens next? I feel like we're kind of past the period where it's a surprise anymore that people were very wrong about Nvidia and the demand of its chips and how much it's going to grow um, during this whole AI boom. So are we at a point now where it's, to use an institutional term, priced for perfection, and there's really nowhere else to go, and it's going to need some time to rest. That's how I'm looking at it. And then we can look at like kind of the other big stocks in the semiconductor sector too, just to see like, okay, like what's AMD doing? It hasn't been keeping pace. It peaked way back in early March, and this is when Nvidia started consolidating, and then it started running, and it's kind of like the last man standing at this point because we have AMD, which is retreating back into its range. It attempted to post a nice little rally here into June, but it's flatlined ever since, and it's been down for the past couple of days. And then you see SMCI, which has been another big boy in all this. I mean, I think this is a pretty big, obvious area
You remember
down.
when I bought $460 puts on that? That was like 2 months ago.
And it doubled the next week.
Oh man, you gotta have this is why we talked about it last week about losses. And if you haven't taken 100% loss on an option, go do that and then come back to top trades and you'll be in a better mindset. You got to laugh at these things because you're like, oh, I think I can make a little bit of money. These puts are real cheap. And it's like, well, they were cheap for a reason. And now maybe it's going to go back to 460 at some point, but who knows when
Yeah,
that is.
it's really tough to say, but I mean, these charts look very different than the Nvidia chart. And so again, I think that also points to the narrowing breadth, not just in the overall market, but within the sector itself. Like these also ran stocks were very hot while Nvidia was running, and they've cooled, and they're nowhere near those highs from the very beginning of the second quarter, and we're all the way down here, below 800 again. I wouldn't go out and buy $400 puts or whatever it was, whatever your trade was at this point. I would wait for some sort of confirmation that we're going to get a breakdown because they could just as easily start to bounce here. I mean, what if we were in a situation, just to kind of play devil's advocate, thinking about like how these trades could develop, where Nvidia rolls over and then SMCI and AMD bounce at support and start moving higher, and then the whole sector just kind of rotates, and then SMH chops along, and you just have Nvidia, kind of dead money walking for a little while. I think that's also a possibility too. But I'm always trying to, like think of what these scenarios could be as we move into these, what are looking like pretty critical areas for these particular stocks right here. Now, speaking of particular areas of interest, you were talking about the whole Apple shindig from yesterday.
It was an ill-timed comment, but I'd like to talk about that clearly.
Everybody hated it. Everybody said, "Oh, that's the worst event ever." I didn't watch it, and the stock was down. And now look at it, all-time highs today. So, whoops, that is a heck of a breakout right there. And we're up what, over 5%. This is its best day in quite some time, since the big earnings gap up back in early May, right there. In the pre-market, when I was talking about what had happened the day before in the chat, I was talking about, okay, like people didn't like that, whatever happened during the Apple AI announcement. What do they call it? Apple Intelligence.
I mean, it was like the Worldwide Developers Conference. They announced all sorts of things. Yeah. AI integrations and whatnot.
Yeah, the thing everybody seemed to glom onto was the whole Apple Intelligence thing. That was leading all the news pieces on it. And then you have Apple, which had, Apple's been a mega cap laggard. I mean, up until a couple weeks ago, it was red on the year. And it's been locked in this huge range. I mean, you go back here to where it was testing the high 190s and posted those highs. That was last summer. That was July of 2023 right there on the back end of this chart. And then it failed again there in the middle of December and just looked terrible, while you had stocks like Nvidia and Meta and some other mega caps just ripping higher to start the year. Apple wasn't playing nicely. It sunk all the way down here into the 160s and looked like it was going to break lower. This thing looked like it was going to just completely fall apart in April. It caught itself. People were impressed with earnings, had a huge day after earnings, and it's drifted higher ever since. And then it was getting back up into this area, and it looked like, oh man, down 2% after a huge hyped event. Seemed like nobody was really pleased with it. At least that's how people were voting with their money right here at the end of the day yesterday. And so I looked at a chart like this and I said, it's probably going to need some more time at least, to chop around here before it takes out 200. And then this morning, everybody was like, no, just kidding. Apple Intelligence, best thing ever. shot the thing up to a breakout. So, I mean, one of the best looking big stock charts out there right now, especially since this big, wide ranging, horizontal consolidation zone has lasted so long. I mean, like I said, it's been almost a year of this thing just coming up into possibly into 200 and retesting it and then failing. So if this holds and if this doesn't turn out to be some sort of huge fake out, which I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's super likely unless something big happens tomorrow in the markets. Um, but this looks like a legit breakout and a very nice one at that. And it looks like it's really got, I mean, like if you look at the heat map today, I think somebody commented this in the chat. It's apple green, everything else red. I mean, look at
Yeah.
this thing. I mean, we have financials taking a hit, Tesla's rolling over today, and we can talk about that in a minute. But there really isn't a lot of green here in the S&P, and then you have Apple, taking the baton and running with it. So nice looking chart. Is this a situation where Apple's just been lagging for so long and now it's finally getting legs? Can it prop up the market here? I don't know, but that's a heck of a breakout right there and something that's worth watching.
Yeah. I'm also wondering, you can tell my mindset is more on like I'm on my heels. Like I think I'm always just kind of worried about like a general pullback if people are running out of money. I'm wondering if it's a little bit of a safety trade too, because like they have so much cash, they sell so much, like it's just like they're not at their stock isn't as hypey as some of these other ones. Like what is something like Amazon? Can we pull up Amazon right now? Like that probably looks way different, but like they have less risk, like Amazon and Apple compared to even Google at this point. Like you're running into the fact that like what if AI takes over and never mind, I'll shut up. The chart has spoken. They all look pretty decent.
Yeah,
Apple
that's
might
great.
just be the first one to break out. Like again, this might be a little bit of flight to safety heading to the big names.
Right, and that happens too. If you have a situation where the market's kind of squishy, and this kind of happened late last year, like in Q3, where it was, the Fang Plus, the Mag 7, whatever you want to call them. It was
Yeah.
it was it was the mega caps kind of propping everything up, and everybody was selling everything else around them. And I think that just, that happens in certain environments. We could certainly be entering one of those environments right now. I think it's a little bit different now with everything that's happened with Nvidia, since it's sort of leapfrogged everything and it's still what the second biggest company out there to Microsoft at this point. And Microsoft, that chart looks great too, last I checked. But I mean, it's really hard to find, any soft spots in these charts right now. All these mega caps look pretty darn good now that Apple's caught up and broken out. So I mean, maybe we do get a situation where people fly into these. But I mean, would Nvidia really be the flight to safety trade after the move it's made? I don't know. But it'll be interesting to watch and see how this develops. On the flip side, on the other end of the spectrum, we have small caps, which we're getting the snot kicked out of them earlier. They're only down 1% or so now. But I mean, this has been a really, really tough trade where, anybody who's been a long time listener knows that we were talking about this as being a pretty substantial breakout here. I thought we were going to see the baton passed much earlier, maybe in Q1, and we were going to see small caps just start racing ahead because we had this really nice breakout heading into the new year right here, and the exact opposite happened. They just got really messy. So we're right back down to where we started again. Kind of in the middle of this, of what I thought was a pretty substantial breakout move, but there really hasn't been a lot of upside momentum, not a lot of follow through. There've been fits and starts, but for the most part, I feel like the small caps are kind of stuck right now because of the environment that we're in, and everybody's so laser focused on inflation and rates and everything else, and they just can't gain any traction. And then, of course, we have CPI and the Fed tomorrow, the double whammy. So maybe this is just kind of people getting spooked again, about rates or whatever have you. I know that I don't have the Fed fund futures in front of me, but I think we're kicking the can to at least September now, I think is
Yeah, and
the
I think September went to a coin flip. I think it's like 50-50 that we
yeah.
would get a cut.
So
Um,
I mean, I think like, we're probably going to have at least like some tremors in the futures market at 8:30 tomorrow morning when CPI comes out, because everybody's going to be, trying to take that number apart and figure out what the Fed's going to do next. And then we have the Fed minutes at 2. So it's going to be a very interesting day. And I think there's going to be a lot of folks kind of like hanging on every word, just kind of figure out like how the rest of the year is going to go.
Yep. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on Apple that we didn't cover. Yeah, I mean, it's just looking good, and there's probably gonna be some knock-on effects, but we'll see what happens there. Um, what any other like rotation trades, any other sectors that you like?
Well, I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room when we're talking about all these mega caps looking so good. And then we have Tesla that looks pretty bad
Not
right
good.
now. It looks like it's breaking down today. I first looked at this chart after it beat earnings, or at least rose after reported earnings. You know, it was up 12% and got back above 150 right there when it looked like it was breaking down. I thought we could get some more traction at some point along in here. It got messy really quick, and now it's rolling over again. Is this going to come down here and retest those low 150s again? I don't know. I mean, the chart isn't looking good. It was getting a little bit long in the tooth um, following this big gap higher here. This was the China news, I believe, the China full self-driving news at the end of April, and it closed that gap pretty quickly and then tried to rally again, and then it just got to the point where it was do or die. It looks like die is the answer to that question, and we're going to move down here and possibly fill these gaps and retest the low 150s. But that's kind of a disappointing move right there, I would say, for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. You know, I think Tesla is a decent speculative barometer as well. And maybe we can just sort of lump this in with, you know, the Kathy Wood plays, your crypto stuff, um, you know, some of the other tech growth names. It just they're where's the juice? Again, it's not here. People are selling this thing. So we have people selling this, and then on the flip side, if they really are opposites, you have the big GM buyback that was announced this morning. Look at this stock. It broke out yesterday with a nice move. This is General Motors, up 4% in a day right there. And look at this base
Hmm.
right here. I got a lot of stray lines on this thing, but this base looks done after a couple of retests around that 42 zone right there. Now it looks like it's marching toward 50. Nice turnaround for the legacy automaker here. Looks pretty darn good to me. And you know, I'm much more interested, like I said at the top of the call, in finding rotation plays like this that might be able to survive some sort of jankier market action than trying to jump on like a potential Nvidia breakout. I feel like, you know, my mind is gravitating more toward plays like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that one's looking good. Anything like I guess with the wind coming out of the sales of Tesla, and I own Tesla shares. I lightened up yesterday, which good luck on my part. But like I still want to hold that stuff just for the you got August 8th full self-driving day coming up. Like I think Tesla might bottom out here. We'll find out. Um,
I very well
but
could. It doesn't look like
no one likes it. And short term, I would not be betting. I wouldn't be going upside on the bet with anything options related. Everything I have is just holding shares and closing my eyes.
yeah, and then we have all the hard resets in commodities that are happening too. Um, I mean, we've seen what's happened in silver. Silver was just had a huge wind at its back with this momentum move into late May, and then it's silver being silver right here. We have a hard reset here that's come all the way back down here. I feel like a retest of the low 29s, high 28s isn't that huge of a deal. I'm still bullish on this longer term, but you're going to get these hard resets now in these names. Gold is a little bit more stable, obviously, but it's still been kind of a mess up in here. You can see our old annotations from we were like talking about how powerful this breakout was once it finally lost that 2000 area of resistance that it took so long to come out of. But you see these big down days. I mean, Friday was ugly for the metals. The gold was down 3.5%. Copper was getting crushed. Copper still is getting crushed. Um, you know, kind of Eiffel Tower action in this bad boy right here. Where is it going to catch? You see these big down days. Friday, copper was down almost 5%. I feel like there's been a big change in trend here. It's just a matter of can it maintain right here? I know there's a lot of macro stuff about copper and China, and there's a bunch of those numbers being tossed around right now. I'm more interested in seeing like where's it going to find support, and when it does, are we going to get a nice big bounce from there to show that the bulls are back in something like this? Because when it broke $5, it looked like, okay, maybe it'll consolidate, for a little while here and move higher. Certainly wasn't the case. I mean, we're all the way back down. We've lost what, 60 cents in the past like 3 weeks. Rough look for copper. It needs to catch and move higher from here. Is energy going to become a good summer trade? I was looking at XLE. I was talking with Enrique about this earlier today. I was looking at XLE. Nice reset here after this big breakout. Now all we need is it to really confirm that this is a bounce and that it's done with whatever this is. From here, can we get up into like a nice big thrust above like 92, 93 and really start moving higher right here? And can these stocks set up and move higher into the summer? I consider that to be a really interesting looking rotation trade, possibly. I mean, are we gonna have a situation where tech cools off, mega cap tech, Nvidia, all that, kind of falls off a little bit, and then the hot money's looking for a place to go? Maybe it's energy. So I'm looking at these names too. And it all comes back to like levels I'm comfortable buying. Like right now, I'm not super comfortable buying the strongest runners, especially not heading into the summer months right here. I'm more interested in these rotation plays and what could pop from here. And I feel like this might be one of them right here.
Yeah. Another comment from YouTube. What about aerospace tech? I think the main ETF there is ITA is the ticker. Might be something to look at there. Yeah, Enrique had a couple good points in the comments too. He was saying, I think Apple stepped into the second place spot with today's move. And then he was talking about GME earlier, where he was saying they obviously GME, they know what they're doing. They're like, oh, Roy and Kitty's back. Let's sell some shares and
right. Yeah,
get
exactly.
some money out of this situation. So it's hard to have a stock keep going up when they're selling shares too. So, but yeah, this is another comment here just on aerospace from Ken. Anything you see there? I mean, that chart's looking decent.
I mean, yeah, it's a good looking chart. I mean, we've seen the defense stocks look pretty good recently. Not typically stuff that I would put on for a momentum trade, but yeah, definitely looks good. Like up and to the right, I can't complain about that. But we've seen, some of those like aerospace defense names, like solid charts all around. I wouldn't have a problem with those from like a buy and hold perspective.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Any other we always come back to good old faithful. Any other top trades, like any other tickers, even if they don't correspond to any narrative, any other thing on your watch list that just keeps on persistently kind of showing up?
Well, there's always, and this is a stock you're very familiar with. PLTR is just a name that keeps on popping up, and it's been a messy chart recently. And we know how this thing trades. It's a very popular stock. It has a ton of attention. Really threw people for a loop right here. I mean, you see this like stranded island up here, this candle, where it popped on earnings. It was up 8%, or that was heading into earnings, I guess. And then the next day, it gapped lower and was down 15% on the day. I mean, you can just see like this little area of action right here between like the end of April and mid-May, where it was just completely bonkers. But buyers are stepping in the $20 to $21 range and scooping up shares no matter what. At least that's how it feels ever since it gapped higher in February on those earnings. And now it's had a solid couple weeks of action right here where it's built off of those lows, and it appears to be consolidating here after those big 3 days higher from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of last week. And it's now kind of hanging out in the middle of this range. This feels bullish to me for this stock. I don't think it's going to go up in a straight line because it's never that easy with PLTR. It always likes to throw a curveball at us. But at the same time, if you look at what other growthy, popular stocks that maybe aren't like the main mega caps that people watch and how they've been acting over the past couple of weeks, this is definitely an outlier. This feels much more constructive than a lot of those other charts which have kind of rolled over lately. This looks constructive to me. It feels like maybe that this got a little overdone, this post-earnings rally where it was up, 30%, followed by like 7. I mean, this was a huge move from 17 to 27, and maybe it's bled off enough of that with this little bit of an echo move right here that it's ready to kind of round that out and try to push higher. I think it's going to be a tough trade to buy, to find that right spot to buy into it. But at the same time, we know this stock can move, and we know it gets a ton of eyeballs on it. if it was any other time of the year, I might be a little bit more open to like taking a flyer on it. But right now, I'm content to kind of watch and see how this kind of plays out here in the low 23s to see if it can really get going and build a new base and push higher. If it closes above 24, then maybe we have something there and it can push into the $26, $27 range and maybe at least test these highs. But I think that's also kind of dependent upon how the market behaves the rest of the week here. But it's definitely something I'm watching.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one I hold Palantir shares, and it's fun. Like I've held it for a long time now. It's a fun stock to be in because you see some of those green bars on the upside. Like you can't get into the stock. It's very hard, like Gunner's saying. Like when would you have bought this thing at different points other than you buy it and you'd probably quickly realize, like I think I've been holding it, at least that whole chart, probably, never mind, definitely that whole chart, maybe a little bit longer. But like the different times to buy there, man, it's not easy. So that might be one where you do like starter position. You go in 1/4% of what you normally, or 25% of what you'd normally buy, just trying to accumulate a position. It's a weird
Yeah,
one, but it's fun as a holder.
it's
It's fun to be in. It's interesting.
it's like one of those stocks that's like a tough trader, but it's a good stock to buy if it gaps down like 10%. It's like, yeah, just buy a few and then like see what happens, because
Yes.
I think people are right about the stock, but I think that it just has a lot of eyeballs on it. It likes to do crazy things. Another one is AI. This is one of those stocks that, we were thinking, okay, we have an AI boom. This is going to be one of the main beneficiaries. And it certainly was in early 2023. Wild trader, obviously, but totally flamed out as it attempted to get up to $50 last year and hasn't been anywhere near that since. So we have a situation now where people got bulled up on this thing again, heading into earnings back in February, and then it just went straight down from there very sharply. I mean, that was an ugly, ugly move. There's really no way around it. And then all of a sudden, pretty decent earnings again at the end of last month. And it has been a really nice earnings drifter ever since then. And it really looks like it's trying to get its act together. Again, not the easiest stock to just go out and trade because it does like to fake people out and dance around. However, like we are coming up on some levels here where maybe we're in a situation where all of this mess is finally going to resolve to the upside. But again, my word of caution would be that are we in the type of market environment where we could support this type of break in a stock like this? I mean, I like the action in it. This is a stock that we still hold a partial position in. I rarely do that over the trading desk where I talk about just like buying a stock and hanging on to it. This is one where we bought and sold most of it and then held on to a few shares over the past year, just because it's kind of a wild stock. And, I feel like one of these days it's going to give us a 6-week move where it goes from, $20 to 50. It's just a matter of like when that's going to happen and if we're in the right type of environment where people are going to be willing to buy this. And again, what if we have like kind of an anti-Nvidia like AI type rotation where folks are like, okay, we're going to let this one cool off a bit. We're going to disperse into some of these other plays. PLTR has an AI angle. It's kind of a cornucopia of interesting trends. Yeah. And then you have AI, which is like, the perfect ticker. So why not?
Yep. Well, I mean, I think similar to last week, we got a bunch of things going on in the market. I think we've talked about all the topics that we want to cover. And I think it's important too. I'll say this, I give you kudos every now and then, Gunner, but you guys at the trading desk are running swing trade options. It is a hard place to be. And you've been slugging it out in the last few weeks and got some winners and stuff. So I think you guys are sitting on Bros is looking pretty good. Some of the other stuff there. So kudos to you and the gang there and your paid publication, the trading desk. I know you're in there in the chat every morning. And again, thanks to everybody, as always, week over week. Thanks everybody in the comments in YouTube. Enrique, we love it. Thanks for writing into us. We'll see. Dare I say it, Gunner? I think we might need to get Enrique on here.
Yeah.
He might need to pop on a top trade. So we'll see what happens. But we appreciate it. If you can, I said this in the beginning write in, let us know how you like these. If there's anything we can be doing better on top trades or that you want to cover. And if you're in the trading desk, go ahead in the chat and make sure you remind Gunner, hey, I want to hear about this on top trades or whatever, or just throw some kudos there in the chat. Gunner, thanks again for your time, man. We appreciate it as always. And let us know what your top trades are week over week, I guess, coming up next week. See.